recording now, and we're gonna have some people coming on in a minute, and then okay, I think we're good. Everyone's Facebook Live is starting. Thanks for everyone for coming on. Tripti, I'm gonna let you have the floor.
Okay, thanks so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Tripti Tupper. I'm the founder of the Stylish Closet, a wardrobe styling platform to help you get more out of the clothes that you already own instead of having to buy new ones. And I'm really excited to announce that our speaker today is Ms. Rolanda Findlay. She had such a great talk last week. If you didn't hear it, please check it out about cultivating confidence. And we're here for part 2 of that.
Great. Thanks, Tripti. You have the stage, Rolanda.
Awesome. Thank you, Tripti. And thank you, Curling. Thank you, Fōkcus family, for having me here today. As it was just said, this is part 2. We're jumping in. We're going to continue our conversation talking about cultivating confidence. And I just really want to start by first just setting the stage and kind of just saying I am incredibly grateful to be here, to be part of this conversation. And I should mention that if anybody feels comfortable, feel free to put your video on. I feel like in terms of the engagement and the conversation, it sometimes helps to kind of see and receive that feedback as we're going. I'm going to also start my little timer here to make sure that I respect the time limits that we have. But yeah, I already kind of talked a little bit about myself and gave a little bit of the background during our last talk. And so for today, I want to jump right in. There is so much goodness that I feel like we can unpack and that we can discuss. And so I kind of want to get right into it. And also I know that in this journey that we're going to take over this next 35 minutes, we're gonna really get a chance. I'm gonna be telling stories and sharing more about myself. So if we haven't met yet, or you weren't able to attend last week's talk, no worries. You will get to know me by the end of our time together here. And so just in terms of laying things out, the intention for today is that I hope that in us sharing and us creating this space together, that each and every person that's here is able to walk away with some nuggets, some understanding, some insight that you didn't have prior to our time together. I also hope that I can be kind of an example and a model of this idea of we can have these kinds of conversations. And it's interesting because, you know, I'm coming from an academic background, a military background. And so Curling, when you ask, you're like, okay, where are your slides? It's funny because in those settings, it's like, where are your slides? Where's your data? Where's like all of this, you know, substantiating, you know, information? Where's your pictures? Where's your whole presentation, right? And so it's kind of fun because I am exploring and playing in this different space of how do we use conversation? How do we make this part of our normal everyday practice? And I hope that today I can model that because I want us, it's layered, right? I want us to be able to see that these are conversations that are really beneficial for us to have. And I want everyone to be empowered to have these conversations, not just in the Fōkcus family, but in other elements and aspects of your life, right? Because that's going to help with the practice of what we're going to be doing and unpacking today. So I am thanking you for your time, your attention, for even showing up today. That is going to be our first win. We are all counting that as a win, that we are here, that we showed up and made ourselves available, and that we're open to learning. If there's anything that I say and I share today that doesn't really resonate, I always like to put this out here. Feel free that it doesn't have to resonate. It's okay. Let that fall to the side and, you know, just receive the parts that do feel right, that do resonate, that do align. The other stuff, let it go. I like to put that out there because, you know, again, I'm coming from this environment where it's, here's the law and you're going to take every single piece of it. And so I like to always just be very clear. That's not my style. That's not how we're going to work. But how we are going to work is that I'm going to kind of lead us on a little bit of a journey. I'm going to start by sharing a story. This story is going to help to illustrate and unpack this idea of having to face a challenge, right? This is something I personally went through, lived experience, facing a real challenge, right? And I'm going to paint this picture so we can all join in. Hopefully you'll see a reflection for yourself in terms of, oh yes, I have challenges and things that I'm taking on in my life. Everybody here is taking on the amazing, wonderful task of founding and starting your own enterprises, right? And so that is a challenge. So feel free to see where there's connection and where you can apply some of the things that we talk about to your founder journey that you're experiencing right now. So we'll go through this story. I am gonna, in terms of going with flow, honoring time, I'm gonna see if there are spaces where I can engage with with everybody that's online and kind of asking, okay, did that resonate? Do you have some examples that are similar? And if there are any questions, please feel free to, if I'm going and it's like, oh, I don't quite get that, or that's not quite resonating, we can kind of take a pause, stop, talk about it, and then move forward. But in this, some of the key terms or highlight things that I'm going to try and bring to light is going to be the power of our mindset when we are dealing with challenges, right? I'm going to be talking about limiting beliefs. I'm going to be talking about the narrative that we have running. I'm going to be talking about imposter syndrome, which is, kind of a buzzword right now, but we're not going to go into the science or the big definition of it. We're going to talk about it from a story. What does that look like? What are we really talking about, right? And so after we kind of get some awareness about what these things are, we're going to use that story to talk about some of the tips, the tools, the ways. There's a million different ways to kind of support our confidence, but I'm going to talk from my experience, lived experience, about how I was able to kind of support myself in that journey, build a practice that continues with me to this day. And then we'll open it up for more Q&A. You can tell me if there's any spaces or places where you want me to go a little bit further, if there's something that I missed and didn't catch. And yeah, that's kind of how the flow will go. Let's see, make sure yes, okay. So I'm going to start with real life story. I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to paint this picture, right? Completely being transparent. So in our time together last time, right, I shared with you that I'm a veteran from the Navy. I served for 10 years as an officer. When I was in graduate school, right, that's when I learned about this opportunity, this job. I had never heard of it before. They were like, hey, you can join the Navy and you can do all the things that you've been taught to do in industrial and organizational psychology, right? But now you can do it for the aviation population, because what they're being asked to do as aviators is high risk, it's high performance, and you can be part of their support ecosystem in giving them the skills that they need to be the best performers they can be, right? And so I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. But then they hit me with and we're going to teach you how to fly. And so I'm like, wait a minute now, you're going to teach me how to fly like an aircraft? I was like, sign me up. Heck yeah, I'm ready, right? Because it's a brand new skill set. I've never done it before. I don't know anybody that's out here flying planes. Let's go, let's do it, right? And you're going to pay me to learn how to do it? Boom, let's go. So I'm like, great, you'll teach me how to do this. So the key part of this, right, in learning how to do this, they want us to understand what the pilots and the aviators are experiencing, what their journey is, right? Well, part of their experience is having to go through a very intense training process, right? And it's basically taking them and putting them in various situations and scenarios over and over and over and over again, right? So that what they're experiencing becomes their new normal. Because what the military is super great at and really understands very well is the power of training. Doing something, even something super small, over and over and over again, so that it becomes normal, so that guess what? When something happens and it's a surprise and it's oh, I'm in a panic moment, I don't want you thinking about the things that should be on autopilot, that are normal. I need you to already know how to breathe, because I need the rest of your brain power to be able to problem solve, right? And figure out how to deal with this moment. So one of the biggest things that I was realizing is like, okay, cool, I'm going to get to sit in be immersed in and experience a training process, right? Where they're going to take me from a space of knowing nothing about flying. And somehow or another, at the end of this experience, I'm going to know how to fly. So I'm coming into this understanding, well, I'm at a little bit of a deficit. I haven't grown up my entire life looking at planes in the sky saying, okay, this is what I want to do. I just finished going to school for a number of years, right? So I went all the way up to getting my Ph.D. So I've been in school a long time learning nothing about aviation. That was not the focus. That was not my intention, right? Okay, for some reason I had enough confidence to say, sure, I can learn this. So when it came to like the, learning, and we had to take classes like navigation, and we had to take things like aerodynamics and engines. I don't even look under my car hood. So this was all foreign, all completely new, right? But the part that was the real trip, and the part that I'm going to like really expand upon for today, is we had to go through water survival training. Okay. And the whole concept behind this, right, is this idea that if you're in an aircraft, there is the possibility that that aircraft is going to crash. And if it crashes in the water, you do have the potential to survive, right? If you are prepared, because that has happened. Aircraft has been shot down. Aircraft has had engine failures. They have hit a bird. I mean, a million things can happen and the aircraft goes down. And what they've learned over time is if we can train and we can prepare individuals for this crazy experience, their odds, the likelihood of their survival skyrockets, right? So it's like, okay, this makes sense. Water survival training. What's going to go in terms of that? Everything. So essentially what they're doing is they're putting us through all of these different experiences to basically say, if this were to happen to you in the water, I don't want you being in the water, that to be the first time you've experienced it. No, I want you to have practiced it. Small little increments, right? Build your confidence on these small little increments so that this way, if this ever, God forbid, does happen and you crash in the middle of the ocean, you know that you are capable of X, Y, and Z. So the thing about that, it's like, in theory, that sounds amazing. Yes, give it to me. I'm down to learn something, sure. The key part that I want to share about this is that I didn't even know how to swim. And I really need us to, to sit with what that means. I had signed up to do this job, and my career is depending upon me passing water survival training. And I currently don't know how to swim. 27 years old, do not have this skill set. Grew up in Brooklyn. That's not an excuse, but at the same time, a lot of people around me didn't know how to swim either, okay? And so it just wasn't something that I knew how to do. And so I'm coming into this situation, right? I'm coming into this class knowing that at the end of the class, the final, it's called the final exercise, is that you have to be able to swim an entire mile without stopping. And you need to be wearing your flight suit. Because here's the thing, right? They understand that if the plane goes down, you're not going to strip down and all of a sudden have a bathing suit on. You're not going to strip down and all of a sudden be in this comfortable pool. No, you're going to be in the middle of the ocean with everything that you have on, right? And so when I thought about that, there was several, let's call them limiting beliefs, right? So this is the illustration of a limiting belief. I actually don't even know how to do this. I don't even know other people that know how to do this. I've never done this before. It could be very easy to put myself in a box and say, I can't do this. I've never done it before. I can't do this. I'm not good at this. I don't even know where to start. There's all kinds of things that I could put on myself. And we talked about this during our last session, right? Those thoughts, imagine that as extra weight that you are now putting on your body. And so at first, that's where I was. At first, I was telling myself, I can learn how to swim. That's going to be fine. But then when the class actually started, the way that the pool is set up, the entry point is about 6 feet deep, right? Now you can't see this over the camera, but I'm over 6 feet tall, right? So there's a level of confidence in the 6 feet section. But then there's this drastic drop where the pool goes from 6 feet deep all the way to like 20 plus deep. And so the first time I get in there and I'm kind of like swimming is, I don't even want to call it what I was thinking I was doing, right? Like I'm trying to hastily, I don't know, hold my breath and float and just do some very embarrassing moves. And I got to the point where the 6 feet moved to the 20 feet and I was like, absolutely not. No, I can't do it. I'm not going to do it. It's not going to happen. And so those are those types of beliefs where it's like, I can't do this. I don't have the capacity for it. And recognizing that narrative, right? This idea that people like me don't swim. I don't have that experience. All of that was something that I had to change. I had to be willing to kind of look at it differently. Say, I don't know how to do it right now. Facts, got it. But I can learn, right? I have the capacity to learn. I can reach out for help. I can do a little bit better each day, right? And so when we talk about this idea of even imposter syndrome, right? Imposter syndrome is this belief that maybe I don't belong here. Maybe somehow or another, yes, I got accepted into this program. Yes, I'm standing here with these other individuals that are in this training program as well, but maybe I don't have what it takes. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. Maybe I should just go home, right? And so as you can imagine, I'm standing there with a room full of peers, majority of men that have had vast amounts of experience swimming. Individuals, colleagues that I knew, they were in there and they were like, oh yeah, swimming, no big deal. I go surfing every weekend. Oh, swimming, no big deal. I actually was on my college swim team. College swim team, are you kidding? Like, you got people in there, like we've got Marines and we've got people that are in the Navy, you know, for many, many years. And so they had come into this knowing that this was a required part of the training. They knew that they wanted to be pilots for forever long. So guess what they did? They prepared. They knew how to swim. So we're clearly starting at two different starting points. And so the other thing I want to kind of bring attention to is this idea of thinking. Me focusing on the fact that I looked different than the people that I was in there with was something I had to address and get over, right? I was the only Black female in there. And there was a level of embarrassment that I had that as the only Black female in this group, I do not know how to swim, right? Because I'm coming from a space and a world that tells me that every time I come up to bat, you better have a home run. Because people are looking at you, they're judging you, they're watching you. And so don't you dare embarrass us. Don't you dare embarrass yourself. That is a heck of a lot of pressure while you're trying to swim. I'm just gonna tell you, okay? It's not helpful. It's not helpful when you're trying to stay calm and breathe and be easy and then also learn and be challenged by the information that they're giving you in the moment. And so that was one of those things where it forced me to kind of reckon and look at, like, I need every advantage that I can have in this moment. I can't play around. We were doing this water survival training 2 months. We would be in the pool for 2 hours every morning before we would then go and do our classroom learning, right? And I knew by the end of this time, not only did I need to be able to swim, I needed to be able to go in there and pass all the exercises. Some of the exercises were like, you have to be able to tread water with your helmet and your boots and your flight suit on for 7 minutes without stopping. And so I needed to really be able to knock it out of the park. And that's when I had to connect with the fact, whatever is weighing me down, whatever is interrupting my progress, I'm going to spend some time and energy getting it out of the way, right? And so the reason why I'm kind of giving the illustration in this way, right, is I'm showing the fact that in life, whenever we're doing something for the first time, it's going to be frightening. It's going to be scary. And there's room and space for there to be doubt about whether, am I capable of doing this? Can I come to the table and perform? And layer on top of that, if you enter the scene and you're surrounded by other people that might seem like they have more knowledge in the area, and they might seem like they're more experienced, and they might seem like, oh, this seems easy for them, right? Then we might question ourselves even further. And so that's the heart of imposter syndrome, right? That's the heart of when we talk about these ideas of limiting beliefs. And so when we think about our founder journey, some ways that that might come up is that if we're starting, which first of all, kudos to everybody for even being willing to show up and try and start. If you're doing a startup, you're doing something that's brand new. It means it doesn't exist. It means that it's going to be disruptive. It means that it's going to be just completely different. So you're in that same boat. You're kind of coming up to the situation and you don't know how to swim, but somehow at the end of this, you're going to have to be able to swim a mile plus in a flight suit. Got it. And so I want us to be able to see that if you're on your founder journey and you are paying attention, or you notice somebody to the side and he's like, oh, well, you know, my family's always on to business. Oh, and well, you know, I got this investment from this person. Oh, well, you know, I have an MBA and experience doing this for about 15 years. And so, you know, I'm starting too. You can sometimes get distracted, right? Distracted in terms of looking at their starting point and their potential performance and miss the fact of, okay, that has nothing to do with me. Okay, that doesn't mean that I can't do it because I'm starting from a different place than they are. Not at all, right? And so sometimes those limiting beliefs can creep in. And I found for myself, particularly when I started paying attention to other people, and when I also started getting concerned with what I thought other people were thinking about me. Here I am, I'm in a swimsuit in front of all these people and they're seeing me splash about, my strokes aren't smooth and clean, like all of this distracting nonsense that I had to get in the practice of shutting down. An example that I like to give for this, right, is when you think about a baby learning how to walk, right? A baby learning how to walk can give two flying figs about your opinion of what they look like. Oh, my legs. Oh, they don't let, I'm not strutting quite yet. Oh, they are not focused or thinking about or could care less about anyone who's observing them. If you watch a baby, they're focused, their eyes are going straight ahead, they're reaching forward and they're ready to make that happen, right? Or they're having, I would say, grace with themselves as they stumble and as it's not quite perfect yet. And so for my perfectionists that are on the line, people that can relate to this, and I think as high achievers that are socialized, right, to, I don't want to say be perfect, but we always want to be right. We want to do our best. We want to look a certain way, right? It leads to impression management, being concerned about the way that we're showing up, having the perfect picture of the end result, as opposed to recognizing there's a process that goes along with this. And the process is really messy. And so if I have a choice of where I'm going to direct my attention, please goodness, let's focus on the process, okay? My process. I don't want to focus on you looking at me or me looking at you, right? So that's just a little tool and tip, right? Where we would say, one, be aware of the story that you're telling yourself. Be aware of the narrative, the potential limiting beliefs, the potential comparison that you're putting on yourself when you're entering any situation. I'm not just talking about you on your founder journey, because again, when we talk about training, we're talking about this being a practice, meaning wherever you are in your life, are you doing this? Are you being concerned and focusing on what other people are doing? Are you focusing on how they're perceiving you? And is that adding added weight to what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to achieve, right? So that's kind of like that first thing, awareness, paying attention to the fact that these limited beliefs exist, that these narratives are there. We've been programmed with it. We've been socialized with it. It's not a bad thing, right? The issue just becomes being aware of what is that programming that is running on in the back of your head, right? And so one thing that I will give many kudos and great kudos to the training program that I was in, right, is that they allowed us to take small chunks at a time. They said, listen, I get it. You're not going to come in here out the gate and we're going to make you swim a mile. We're going to have you swim for 3 minutes each day. We're going to build, there's building blocks, and we're going to practice the same thing over and over and over until it becomes part of basically your programming, part of just the way you see the world, part of just how you choose to come into the water, right? And so for me, a big part of that was learning how to be calm in the water. I would go in the water because I was having these thoughts of, oh my gosh, I don't know if the water can support me. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it. And guess what? That panic is going to bring you down every time. I learned that you have to be confident in the water. If you want to swim and you want to swim to survive, you got to be confident where you're at. And that's believing that the water is going to hold you, right? And so that, for me, I recognize, okay, when you're an adult, right, and you're trying to learn something brand new, you might already have a lot of resistance that you've built up over time versus that baby who's just walking. They don't have that same resistance built up. And so I had to work on being mindful, and to support myself in that, one of the things was celebrate all of the wins, right? All of the wins that I was taking in, I needed to celebrate. And so I want to take a second. I don't know if everybody remembers the assignment for our last session, right? It was, hey, journals are up. I like it. The assignment was to look at make a daily practice of picking out 3 things that you can be grateful for, 3 things that you can show appreciation for, but also in your founder journey, looking at what are these experiences, what are those things that kind of have supported you on your journey that you can identify, that you can look at. We don't have as much time to really go deep into that, but I wanted you to, one, get the experience of looking at your journey and starting to identify some of those wins. But with that, I'm going to add a couple other, food for thought, right? Things to think about. How easy or how hard was that exercise for you? For many of us, we've been socialized not to pay attention to ourselves in that manner. It's been seen, especially as women, for whatever reason, right? We've been socialized in a lot of settings. Don't be haughty, don't be prideful, don't be arrogant, don't look at yourself. If someone compliments you, deflect. Find a way to not receive it, find a way to play it down, bring in the whole group. Everyone did it. It wasn't just me, or I don't know, it could have been better. We've been just socialized that that is a part of femininity and being warm and nurturing and mothering. And I'm not going to go into a whole spiel about that, but I will say that we've already received a lot of that training. Let's give ourselves some other training. The other training is to identify, is it challenging for you to receive a compliment? Is it challenging for you to stand in your achievements? Is it challenging for you to own the goodness of what you've already accomplished and done? Is it challenging to share that? Does it feel uncomfortable? As my coach would call it, is it a sticky place? Is it a sticky place for you? Just notice that, just to be aware of that, right? Because then there's opportunity for us to practice, incorporate ways to kind of build on that. The other thing is that another thing that we're really programmed into when it comes to an achievement, an accomplishment, a win, is the way that we perceive it, right? We think about it as an end result, as an outcome. A lot of times when we're talking about what we've done, when we feel most comfortable to share, it's, I got this degree, I got this amount of funding, I was able to make this particular partnership. But there are many wins that come before you get to that end result. And it's all about perspective and being able to identify those wins that are a part of process. And I'll give you an example. Me even just being willing to get into that pool, knowing that I didn't know how to swim, and knowing that people were going to see me, and knowing that it was an uncomfortable, vulnerable space for me, is a win, right? We are not as often taught to pay attention and to document those types of wins. But here's why it's important to document that type of win. That was a demonstration of courage. Courage is a transferable skill. Courage is something that I reach to in every element of my life. But if I don't take the time to pay attention and point it out and see it, when I'm trying to reach for courage in another area of my life, I might not remember all my demonstrations of it in the past. The greatest way to build your confidence about something is to really realize this is not my first time doing this. It's not my first rodeo. I've proven myself in other scenarios where I've had to do this. So courage for me, that's a big part of my narrative. A willingness to show up, to be vulnerable, to take that risk over and over and over again, even if I fail. Okay, next. Who cares? That's not what the win was for me. The win was my willingness to show up. Another one, for example, like this is to kind of give the analogy of like when I say result and outcome versus process. A willingness to speak truth to power. That is something that for me, I've identified in my journey, in my story, in my pattern that I'm willing to do, right? So in the military, or when it was growing up at home, wherever it might be, I was willing, and it doesn't mean that I wasn't scared, doesn't mean that I didn't fear consequence, right? I would be willing to do and speak and to say what needed to be said and spoken on, right? Being able to celebrate and acknowledge when I tried or when I did that and when I faced my fears as a win has nothing to do with whether the end result was positive. Did that leader receive the information that I shared with them? Did that leader give me a promotion, or we don't do promotions and raises in the same way, but you get what I'm saying. Did they reward me for this? That's not the same thing. And so when you look at the celebration wins that you wrote down or that you do write down, take a moment and recognize, are you writing down only results and outcomes, or are you also acknowledging your process? Are you also acknowledging the moments that you showed up? Are you also acknowledging these other traits that are incredibly important, like courage? Or are you looking at these other elements that maybe we're not highlighting as much in our society, but we're starting to pay attention to how incredibly important this is, right? And so that's something to keep in mind with kind of this idea of like celebrating your wins. And so I want to, when we talk about like tools and how can we continue to build our confidence and how can we, in these challenging moments, this is I tell you, when I tell you a tool that is free, but also will serve you a million times over, this is it. Start trying to pay attention to those wins and take it a step further. We talked about journaling. Yay. Write it down. I'm not going to go into the whole like, okay, what neurological things are taking place. There's lots of research that you can Google and you can look up and you can see that there is something that happens when you are actually physically writing, hand writing. There's connections and synapses and things that are happening between your brain and between your eyes and between your hands. So write the wins down. This is not brand new novel. This is like fascinating stuff. It's just that you have to do it. So today, I'm pointing it out, right? Now it's up to you to actually do it. When you make it into a practice, it becomes your normal, and then it becomes something that's part of your reprogramming, and it's going to start happening on autopilot. In that same vein, you start looking at your outcomes and your results. You start standing in your wins. You start owning that confidence of like, somebody gives you a compliment. Thank you. That is a complete sentence. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for that affirmation. I'm excited about that too. Thank you. That is how we receive that, right? To help us with this practice, when you start feeling like, man, I'm starting to really identify this, or maybe you feel like I already identified this type of stuff in myself, start identifying it in others, right? Are you able to call out wins and celebrate with others, right? Because the practice happens when you do it for yourself, but you're also catching practice when you do it for somebody else. The next level of that, if you don't, you know, if you have someone who you give a compliment with, and then they kind of shrink down and they start playing a little bit smaller and they kind of are deflecting and saying that they're not worthy in some type of way of receiving the compliment, do you push further to say, no, actually, you're going to take this compliment? Actually, what I just saw is that you showed up and you did something that you've never done before, and you did an amazing job. And I'm celebrating you in that, right? Model that, show that. Yeah, and that all of that ends up being practice. Another thing that I would kind of throw out there in terms of this is writing the wins, making sure you're speaking them out to yourself and to others. Another thing you can think about with the wins is you can actually record yourself. Like on your phone, record that win, and you can play that back, right? We are really in a process of just reprogram. I'm trying to put your brain on autopilot, right? So any of these little cheat codes that we can use for that, use them, right? The other thing would be, I said the sharing of the wins, calling out the wins in others. The other quick things I'm going to give, because I'm noticing the time, finding role models in this area, right? I think a lot of times we are trained, we already know how to find role models that are in our area of business, right? So when I was in the military, I knew how to find leaders that were in the military doing what I wanted to do. When I was in school, the same type of thing. For all of you, you probably have founders that you're looking up to and that you're like, oh, I want to model my business after them. Do you have individuals that specifically, when it comes to confidence and how they show up and how they're demonstrating themselves, do you have role models for that? Are you intentional about paying attention to that, right? Because if you don't, no worries, but get some, right? Because any skill that you want to build, that's how we go about doing it. And this is just one of those things that I think gets tossed to the wayside because we focus more so on how we build these other areas, the technical aspect of it. Well, what about, is this person, for me, demonstrating vulnerability? In social media, are they showing me just the end results? I already know how to navigate that. I already know how to see the beauty in that. But are they also showing me the process? Are they also showing me their behind the scenes? Are they also being very transparent about, hey, this was a win for me because it was hard. I might not have won in terms of how everybody else judged it, but this was definitely a win, right? Because that helps to make that, again, part of your normal, part of your programming. And then finding accountability partners in that. So I have a coach, but then I also have a friend that we're both writers. And that's an area where we might be feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome. How can I call myself a writer? I don't have a book yet. What do you mean? I am a writer because I write. Like I literally have a pen and I know words and I put them together and that makes me a writer. Next. And so it took a while to get to that moment, right? Where I'm going to stay in front of a group. I'm a writer and, well, where are your receipts? Where, what have you written and where can I see you at? So I have a friend though, who's on that same wavelength where we understand we're going to come together. And when we do, we invest in building up each other's spirit. And we invest in speaking life into one another. And when she hears me, as I recount my week and I talk about my wins and I talk about what I did and what I didn't do, when she hears me speak in a tone and a narrative that is limiting or is not true or is keeping me bound up, she calls it out. That's an accountability partner for this area, for confidence. She'll say, actually, what I just heard you say right there was actually not accurate. And here's why. And does that feel right for you when you said that out loud? Because let's think about that. Is that true? Is that your real experience? Like when people say, you're only going to get one shot, you're only going to get one opportunity. That's not even true. That's not been my experience in life, right? And so having someone to help you call out those falsehoods is an incredibly important tool. And then I really think this, sharing these conversations, having these conversations, teaching this type of stuff to other people, sharing it with other people. As you noticed in today's conversation, I didn't build a presentation for a reason, because I want you to be able to see that you can take any one of your life stories, whether it was learning how to ride a bike for the first time. Oh, by the way, you've all made the decision to start your own business. Hello, like you all can be giving this type of talk to the people in your circle, the people in your lives. And so I want us to recognize it's part of the practice. So the more you talk about it, the more empowered you're going to feel in the area. Just like for me talking about it today, it empowers me more in the area too. So, woo, with that being said, listen, we're like 2 minutes over, but that's okay. That kind of covers, now there are more tools, there's more tips, there's more things that we can go into, but I think that gives us like an initial groundwork, an initial foundation. And so I don't know if we want to jump into questions, comments, that kind of thing.
I just want to model that. Great job. This was a big win for you, just going through this series, right? So I know we were going to talk earlier about that. I said, no, I kind of want to be surprised what Rolanda brings to the cohort. So that's why I didn't want to do an earlier session. But this I did want to open up to the cohort before offhand. If anyone has any questions, they can kind of unmute themselves. Or Tripti, you have one?
Sure. Well, it's more just conversational. First, of course, again, thank you for your service and your generosity and your kindness. It's all appreciated. And such a great story. Just like equivalent is that like 6 foot Rolanda comfortable in 6 feet of water is literally the equivalent of like 5 feet me comfortable in like 2 feet of water. So like I get it. But I had a few thoughts that might be a little bit contradictory. And so it's just really more conversational. And I love the baby example and like the shaky legs and all of that. But the truth is that one of the other words that you used was socialization. The truth is that the world isn't judging that baby. Like the world is thinking that baby is cute and the world is accepting that that baby's going to have some trouble walking because that is the like rite of passage and that's part of life. Whereas honestly, I say this as a 43-year-old, minority woman, right? That like, you don't get that same kindness and graciousness as you're maneuvering through other ways in life. Like for me, the lesson there is, there was no pretense. That baby had their own confidence. They made their own way through life. Like they figured out how to walk. But again, like when I'm thinking about standardizing that, and I think, but if you don't learn how to walk by 12 months, you're delayed, like it's expected that you're going to figure it out. You don't know that as a kid. You just learn and you're happy and you're not caring about judgment. But that socialization in life comes later, where you're like, oh, this resistance is being formed partly due to the judgment that does come our way that baby is not experiencing. So that's like one of the things I just want to like, and I do want to talk about it. But then the second thing I want to talk about is confidence in general, right? And it might again be sort of the antithesis to this, or a piece of this imposter syndrome. And so just a quick experience of my own is that like, a few years ago, I was one of 2 candidates left to be a CFO, a dream CFO of a company that we all know about. And it was like, oh my God, this would be amazing. And it was between me and this guy who's super smart, by the way, but like it was between me and him. And they like kept me on hold for a few weeks, probably while they were like warming this guy up for the offer, like whatever that was. And I was lucky enough, because it doesn't always happen, I was lucky enough to get feedback from the recruiter. And so she said, well, I want you to know that they are absolutely certain that you can do the job. So that's good, right? Okay. I mean, the expectation is that if I got that far, that like I could do the job, right? But like, well, that's good, right? But these are the exact words. She's really strong, but she may be a little too bold, a little too intense. The reason I'm telling you this is because we work a lot on, make sure that you're confident, celebrate wins, be proud and don't, and take a compliment. And, don't listen to the advice of like, tear yourself down or be a wallflower or whatever, right? But the truth is, again, and this is sort of, again, backing on the baby, like, is that socialization and resistance and experiences in terms of this do lead to you tempering yourself or your authenticity, or your ability and willingness to venture out and try new things, because again, like the world isn't as gracious and understanding or accepting. And so I think that solving one half of this problem is absolutely necessary, but, may fail to yield optimal results until the other half is also resolved.
Okay, so I have so much to say. I love what you just shared, and I appreciate and thank you so much for bringing that to the surface and really highlighting it, right? Because there is this space of, look, this is really nice. Can be kind of also seen as a little bit cotton candy-ish, right? In the sense of we live in this world, and if we don't recognize the world we live in, then are we really in reality? And so what I would just challenge us to kind of push a little bit further with is that it can be a challenge, right? The world that we're living in can have judgment on it, right? There can be people that are not rooting for you and cheering for you. And there can be individuals who think you're too bold, right? So back to these beliefs though, what I love to just offer is that doesn't serve. That's not helpful, right? Because we've seen examples that tell us that something else is also possible, that something else is also true, right? So what we know to be true is that while there might be a few haters in the audience, there's also people that love, adore, and are cheering for you. There are people that might think that you're too bold. Okay, yeah, that's a distraction. Sure, they might exist, but there's people that also think the fullness of who you are is brilliant. I don't want any less of Tripti. I want the full amount of Tripti. And if somebody isn't in alignment with that, no problem. Back to this idea, well, there's only one opportunity. There's only one job that I could be a CFO at. That's garbage, right? That wasn't the opportunity and the space and the place that you want to work in and be in, right? And there are many more opportunities that are available for you. And so when we think about this idea of the world that we live in, right? Glass half empty, glass half full, right? Do we focus on the fact that there are people that are looking at us and the fact that the world that we live in is scarce and it's brutal and it's rough and it's mean? And what I'm saying is that I've lived and I've grown up in a space where that was the words that were told to me. You're coming from a concrete jungle. You're coming from a space where you've got to be a million times better. You're coming from a space where you're Black, you're young, and you're going to have to prove yourself every single time, right? What I'm saying is I can choose to believe that. Many years I did, and I fought through that, but it's heavier and it doesn't serve me as well as my newer level of understanding, which tells me actually, if I look at my life, all the proof says opposite. The proof of that shows me that I have people that have been cheering for me, supporting me, wanting more of me and the fullness of who I am over and over and over again. Now, I can choose not to look at that, right? Because I'm hands up because I've done that, right? But when I started tapping into the fact that, wow, like when I'm just me, people actually relate to that and it resonates and it draws more people to me than if I was that masked version of myself, that alternative version of myself. And that's how I think when we talk about limiting beliefs, when I think about this world as a scarce, when it comes to resources, there's not enough to go around. I haven't had a day where I'm begging for bread. Like I haven't had a moment where, and I've had some challenging childhood life experiences, but I am still like here. We are living representations that some of those narratives are, I'm not going to say wrong, right? But maybe they're outdated, maybe they're incomplete, right? And so it's really just about how do we accelerate, right? Is by dropping some of those beliefs that don't serve us. I'm not saying that they're wrong. I personally would like to say that in my personal time, but for this group, I'm not going to say it's wrong. I'll say it's incomplete. It's incomplete.
Thank you.
I hope that answers the question. I kind of went on like a whole little
No, it's
spiral
okay.
there,
I feel
but
like I need to do this like offline for like another 4.5 hours, but like, thank you. I appreciate it.
yeah, you're amazing though, by the way. Like just say, like your energy and like, yeah, like I was listening into the first part of this, like you have so much insight and you have so much guidance and you have so much experience and you like, you know, share that in this way that's so like powerful, right? And so if I may, if this whole point of this talk was for nothing else, but then to just speak affirmation to you and validation to you to say, please, goddess, keep bringing your light. Like, please do not dim this
No,
light.
I can't now. Literally, I can't even, like, this is now when you're to force me to accept this, like, you know, like, I don't like that, just too much. So can we please like move to Sunny, because I can't take this anymore. Like, Sunny, ask your question. Thank you, Rolanda. I appreciate it.
That's great. That's great. I love that.
I was
Joanna,
just wondering if she's doing it on purpose to test how you would respond.
I think that was authentic.
That was great.
Joanna,
Receive. It's true. Yeah.
Joanna, I was gonna let you have the floor before we close things up. Did you have any feedback?
I just was remembering the conversation that you and I were having, Curling, the other day, where we were saying that, you know, the times when, you know, when you're the only one in the room that looks like you, that the times when you're focused on what you're supposed to be doing rather than on how other people are perceiving you, or like you don't notice. Like, so there've been lots of times where someone will point out to me afterwards, like, you were the only woman there, and I'm like, oh, I guess you're right, I was, but I was so focused on what I was there to accomplish that I wasn't paying attention to that. And those are the times when I've been the most confident, the most successful. And so I think, you know, that just resonates. And another thing I was thinking about as you were talking was the, I can't ever remember the name of the Dunning-Krugers, you know, where the, you know, the more you know, the more you're aware of what your flaws are and your weaknesses are, and the less you know, you're kind of ignorant of it, and maybe you have some overconfidence because of your ignorance. And so, so I was just sort of thinking about, you know, that concept in the context of what you're saying, that as we get older and now as we have more experience, it actually may be harder. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I was
No,
thinking.
I mean, it makes sense. I've heard it termed, let's use the word resistance, right? I love, like, when we say, so as we get older, yeah, we get more of these experiences that can then add to this resistance. So that baby walking through the world,
They don't know.
they're not holding that same baggage as us,
Exactly.
right? And that's fair. Like, right now we have more baggage, life experiences that we are carrying with us. We can choose, though, what we want to carry in those bags. Am I going to carry the information, the thoughts, the mindset that's going to propel me further, that's going to give me strength, that's going to allow me to be more agile? Or am I going to hold on to some stones and things that just are going to drag me down as I'm trying to move forward? Yeah.
And I guess the other thing that really resonated was how you were talking about, you know, the preparation, right? Like doing something, like the practice of doing it every day and being prepared. And I think we talked about this a little bit even last week, that's really important to just, like, if you're not comfortable with your presentation or your pitch, like, you're definitely gonna have a problem. Curling likes to tell this story about, you know, the time when he was pitching and somebody like held up a timer in the middle of his pitch that he, you know, and like memory wipe. Right?
Yes.
Because he wasn't expecting, you know, like, you have 90 seconds to talk and you're just getting through it, and then somebody interrupts you and you're like, where was I?
Yes.
And so, and luckily he knows, you know, he knew what he was gonna, you know, the concepts well enough to carry it through, and nobody except those of us who had also memorized it knew, but it's sort of like, if you're really prepared, like, that doesn't affect you.
Yes. That was that training process I had.
It was great. You're like, memory wipe. I'm like, you went way off script.
No, that's a great one.
And even in those moments, like, just practicing the turnaround, right? These are all, like, I mean, like, there's so many, like, but it's the turnaround of saying, yeah, I forgot where I was, or maybe I didn't do that in the prescribed way that would be considered perfect, but that's okay. That's okay.
I love that. I'll end with Sunny. I know you've been giving great feedback on the chat. Sunny, do you want to unmute yourself and you have some feedback or question?
Yeah, it's not necessarily a question, just something to kind of comment on what Rolanda was saying as far as like that term resistance, you know what I mean? Like, personally, just kind of like tying in some of my personal experiences, and also some of the things that you were saying as far as like training and you know, some of the things being outdated. For me, that word resistance, I feel like that's an outdated word. And the reason why is because, like, if you think about it, based off of, you know, your presentations from the last one and this one, if you're going to use the word resistance, especially for a person that identifies as Black, as me, I identify as Black. And if you say like, oh, we're part of the resistance, and that to me, it kind of seems like, oh, we're resisting somebody who was previously in power. You know what I mean? So it's not necessarily a resistance type of thing. It's more so of a breaking the narrative that is out there, or changing the narrative, or changing those stereotypes that people have on a person of color or a woman or someone who cannot, even if you're not within like in a racist situation or a stereotypical situation, you can even be somebody with a disability. But anything, to me, I feel like the words that we use, have to be kind of like careful of using those. So it's not necessarily, just like, it was just kind of something that I picked up on. That's all.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, the term like resistance, as I was using it, is from the law of attraction and stuff.
No, I know. But the way I interpreted it kind of went off.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, thank you for sharing that.
No, good feedback. Rolanda, I knew we'll have another part coming up next week. I think it would be good offhand. I want to remind everyone they can email me at curling@focus.com to get your journal. I know everyone kind of had some of their journals, but these special focus journals we'll send out. I know I get to see Burb and all. Everyone could just send me their address on the cohort Slack channel or on that part. But Rolanda, yes, I should probably always say that too. Just thank you for your service, even on the naval side. I should always say that first. We're going to kind of 4th of July and freedom, but thanks for all that, and thanks for just being just so open. Like that story just was touching. When everyone had all these kind of swim stories that came up. I see you try.
I have to go back in the chat. Like,
you gotta look back at chat. I'll email you the chat on that part. But I just want to kind of thank you for all those stories. Any last thoughts, Rolanda, before we wrap anything up? You want to tell the cohort? I know I say planning on like next week for that you can actually have the other part of the series, and then we're gonna have city highlights the week afterwards. But any final thoughts you want? Or homework or anything of that nature?
Sure. I would say after today's session, if you get a moment, if you get a chance, like go ahead and take some time to journal about what came up for you today. Like I think it's so powerful to just let whatever intuitively connected or disconnected or whatever you might be seeing that maybe, like I said, if something doesn't feel right, it doesn't resonate, it doesn't hurt me at all, that you acknowledge that, because that's a space for you. Like there's something in that, if it's a trigger or if it's something that feels right. And so I would really just advise and kind of like say, journal and write and kind of just chew on some of the things that might have come up today. And then continue with the celebrating of the wins. And so to make this super accessible, I'd say one win every day. And I'm not putting any parameters on it, right? If you notice that a lot of your wins tend to be results oriented, outcome oriented, challenge yourself to throw a couple of wins in there that are oriented in another way, right? Unorthodox, right? Unorthodox wins, right? But just one a day. And if you don't have time to find one win for the day, there's a bigger conversation that we have to have with each other, right? Okay, so that would be my kind of easy homework for this week. One win every day, just training your mind to be able to see things a little bit differently, and then take some time to kind of journal about what may have come up during today's session together.
All right, that's great. I love that. I love that one. I could do that one win. I've been doing the 3 kind of being grateful ones, so that's been great. That's been helping me out. So yeah, I think I could do the one win. Thanks, cohort, for all the great feedback, Joanna. And Rolanda, thank you for all the great just stories and just being so transparent. We need that. And I'll let everyone go. We won't have enough time for speed networking, but I wanted everyone just to have as many questions for these series as possible. All right, take care, everyone.
Thank you.